What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Drippin' Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Corvan, and today we have the amazingly talented and epic Warmoose Forge, a dedicated blacksmith and mental health advocate. Moose now shares his passion through blacksmithing demonstrations and historical education, bringing his childhood dreams to life at Renaissance fairs and beyond. Before we dive into this fascinating conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a rating wherever you're listening, and be sure to check out our Wednesday show, Inks and Lattes, hosted by DJ Bloxel and Eva Crow, where we discuss the latest creations from within the creative coffee cafe community. Also, a quick shout out to Sara Burton for the launch of her book Cherry Trail, a story from Havenburg, which is out today. Like, the day that I put this up is going to be out. You need to go pick it up. Now, let's welcome Warmoose Forge to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
So I am Moose, and I am a blacksmith. Right now I am specializing in functional decorative items. Think, patio tables, coat hooks, stuff like that. But I also do some bladesmithing and some armor smithing. Done a couple projects with shields, stuff like that. And been doing that in business for a little over 3 years, maybe 4 years now, and got my start in 2016 when my ex-father-in-law, who was a bladesmith, got me started hitting my first piece of hot steel. And the first thing I ever forged was a knife that I'm still exceptionally proud of, still one of the nicest knives I've ever produced. And that one's never leaving. I don't think there's enough money in the world for me to sell that knife.
You know what? Yeah, no, you can't give up that first one, regardless. Even if it was complete shit, it's like, no. This one stays. I don't care. Okay, so then that actually, let's elaborate more onto your discovery for the passion of it all. Like, what you were showing all this stuff. What about it really draws you to wanting to do it?
Well, I'm a creative person. I always like to be making something, and I really like to work with my hands. I've got a pretty blue-collar background. I mean, I grew up on a small family acreage. We didn't really have a farm, but we had, a few bottle calves growing up, some sheep, some goats, a horse once, and a whole bunch of chickens. But I kind of grew up doing that kind of stuff. Some of my redneck friends and I, welded together a battle axe out of old saw blades and like a steel bar once. It wasn't a real battle axe, but it did destroy the old doors they had laying out in their grove really well. So
that's
who
an
cares?
axe. Then I don't care. That's an
right?
axe. Does the job.
I don't know that I would feel safe swinging that these days without a little more protective gear. I actually have a couple of scars from hanging out with them. But so I actually got my start back into this community through first tabletop role-playing games, and then through the Renaissance Fair community. So been listening to some podcasts about business development. I was kind of on an ADHD kick on business development, investing, stuff like that, trying to figure out how to make my life better. And I don't know, some of that stuff is just dude bro whatever, but in the process I discovered that a lot of the big name CEOs in the tech industry and a lot of the big tech developers and stuff like that were crediting their experience with tabletop role-playing games for some of the creative problem solving, the collaborative efforts, all the stuff that you know and love, and probably a lot of your listeners know and love. And so joined up with a group, and wasn't even playing D&D. We were playing a modified NWAD homebrew. Didn't know what that was, had no clue, got started, and ran into a player, and they're like, I'm from Iowa. And I'm like, I'm from Iowa too. So I quick sent them a DM. I'm like, I'm not like super public about where I'm from all the time, and at the time I was living in a really small town, so it probably would have been really easy to find me, and just leery of the internet, having grown up with all the, unrestricted internet access. And they invited me down. They were HEMA practitioners who did combat demonstrations, period correct combat demonstrations for the local Renaissance Fair. So first year I came down, fell in love with it, kind of got started. And at first I was going to do woodworking because they already had a blacksmith on hand. The group disbanded as some of the members got older, kids, stuff like that. And long story short, one of the blacksmiths there at the fair lived, 15, 20 minutes down the road from me. So I went and bought a propane forge and a cheap Harbor Freight anvil from him, spent about $120 on hammers and tongs, and started squishing things, probably in violation of the terms of agreement for my townhome. But in the garage, went to town on a stump of wood. I found at a local sawmill and an anvil, and the rest is history.
That's freaking awesome. I love that. That is so great. Yeah, and going back and just talking about the business podcasts and all of that stuff. If there's one thing I've learned over the 19 years of self-employment shit, is you got to pick and choose, because there's a lot of bullshit out there. There's a lot of bullshit, and it's like, okay, I can see how it could help somebody, but that's not really my style. And it's kind of piecing together through all the different information what works for you. And
there's a lot of big names out there who, are only big names because they made one right call on the stock market.
Yes.
And everything else they've done since then has been, generic,
yes.
generic stock market, I don't know, index fund type stuff.
Yeah.
And they haven't done much better than the market, but they're known because they called one big crash or one big surge, And so, but yeah, a lot of that advice, it either comes from that or a place where people, fail to remember that having parents with hundreds of thousands of dollars to, invest into your business does a lot. Or having having a network, even if you don't have the financial support, sometimes your parents give you access to a network of people who might be able to get you into rounds of funding and things like that not everybody has access to, and not everybody has room to fail. I mean, hand to mouth, you got a family to support, you don't have room to make mistakes.
100% man. It is an absolute shit show if you don't know the right people or have access to the right things. You were an artist, or you have been an artist. How much of that goes into the blacksmithing when you're doing it? Do you draw out what you want to do, or do you just kind of eyeball it? How does the artistic side play into it all?
It really depends on the project. There are some projects, I have autism and ADHD, so I have something called aphantasia. That means that sometimes it is really hard for me to visualize something in my head. If I see it on paper, sometimes I can figure out where, the line is wrong or the proportions are wrong. But if you look that up on the internet, I'm typically next to the worst. I don't have an absolute zero picture, but the image is real indistinct, unless it's a memory. Occasionally memories, especially PTSD informed ones, have some really vivid visceral stuff. But it kind of depends on the project. Sometimes I'll go based on another image I found and just kind of get it close and use that for inspiration. Sometimes I'll have a really clear idea in my head of what I want to do, and the function just kind of dictates the shape of the object, and everything else, on top of that's just artistic flair. And I've got some projects that I drew up and came out exactly like I drew them up, and I've got a couple of projects that I drew up and didn't quite come out exactly how they drew them up, but they came out the way they needed to. One of them was that latest knife post that I had. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, no, I did. It's very good. Very good.
That one didn't, the blade shape was just ever so slightly different, but it actually wound up being a better fighter for it. So overcoming that, let's talk more about that one. How did you figure out the way to best overcome these things? Was it just trial and error, or did somebody help you? Yeah, I mean, a lot. I'm late diagnosed. I mean, my actual ADHD diagnosis I got this year. I've known for a few years. Autism diagnosis, so I have verbal confirmation. I have nothing on paper. Just because there are a lot of countries, and I believe you're from Canada. Canada, it's really hard to immigrate there if necessary. If you have a mental health condition like ADHD or autism, but autism is a hard no across a lot of the developed world for immigration, from Scandinavian countries through New Zealand. So, but yeah, long story short, I grew up in some highly restrictive religious environments. I grew up in small town, very conservative, very, very ADHD isn't a real thing kind of America. And I mean, my graduating class was 16 people. The entire high school, my senior year, staff included, was 98 people.
Jeez, that is small. Holy hell.
That's 4 grades, including staff.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so super tiny. So there was a lot of, and then I've been into 2.5 cults if you count the United States military, and there's a whole backstory on that too. But there's really restrictive, really overbearing parents. Especially my dad was physically abusive, and so there was a very hard, fast line to toe, and sometimes the rules weren't clear, so it was easier to not do something than to do something. And I finally really truly burned out just after the pandemic, or right during. I kind of went through a divorce really early on in the pandemic that was finalized in 2020, a whole bunch of stuff, and it really came to a head. And I'm to the point where therapy isn't helping, a really supportive now spouse, an awesome family, a really, really great group of friends that I just happened to luck into, a couple of really helpful internet communities, things like that. And I still was just struggling. So things like scheduling, tasks to get done, and all of that, like trying to keep myself accountable. That knife project that I had was one of the first big commissions I took on, and it took me a year to get it. And the only reason that it wasn't a problem was because it was a very close personal friend who ordered that. I've since made a bunch of changes, to keep myself accountable, but that's been a real struggle because ordinary task management stuff just doesn't work. And so I finally started on medication, just finished up my first month, only missed a couple days. And it's been remarkably life-changing. And I think we'll still have to, tweak and balance some things, but just a simple medication and everything from task inertia through being able to remember tasks has just remarkably improved.
A lot of people think of the medication and they're like, oh, it's like that limitless drug where everything just, it's like, no. That's not what it is. It's, for me, normally I have about 1,000 voices happening at all times. That's what's always, there's always some thought that's happening. Occasionally one is louder than the other. The pills quieted everything. They were still there. I still had to deal with them, but I could focus better.
The best metaphor I've come up with, and I think my experience is similar, is if you've been to a concert, the talk before the concert, there's just indistinct like fuzz all the way around you at a high volume. And when the lights come down, the whole crowd gets quiet. And occasionally there will still, for the first 30 seconds, there'll still be that one drunk idiot behind you who's already drunk and the concert hasn't even started, who shouts something stupid through the crowd and a couple of people laugh. But that drop in like intensity and volume and that kind of anticipation and clarity of what's about to happen next is a pretty good metaphor for what it's like to take those.
Definitely. So yeah, no, like I 100% understand just that, the change in what's possible, because for me it went from everything was hopeless and I was never going to get anywhere to suddenly there was hope in my life and I could see what was possible and I wanted to get there. That was my big shift. It was a very much a I think I can, so I'm going to try, instead of I think I'm going to fail, so I'm not.
I think I remember crying in the first week and talking to my wife and being like, how did I ever live my life without this? Like I have been struggling so hard to be, what society calls a good and productive person, and now I can't, or now I can, once I'm on the medication.
100%. And again, like it's not a fix-all, but it gives you a fighting chance. It puts you up closer to normal, so you can start doing those things that normal people do. So then, going to the small business side of things, you're taking commissions, you're doing all that stuff. What has the start of that journey been like for you? Like, have you encountered a lot of obstacles? What's sort of the overlaying process been for you?
Yeah, I think I started a little too optimistic on pricing, which is probably the opposite of the direction a lot of people go. I was producing these little runic amulets, and as a eclectic pagan, it was for a community that I'm, close with. Doesn't really matter for other people, their views, whatever. It's just something that I resonated with. And I put a price tag out there that was about 5 times what they were worth. And it started that whole process. But, I still don't count on this as a full-time income. I kind of expected 5 to 10 years before I could even take this to a full-time thing. Develop, buy the tools. Like I said, I started on a Harbor Freight anvil, which, if you aren't familiar with Harbor Freight, or your listeners aren't, it's like dollar store tool supplier. But starting from there, I've slowly acquired things. Like last year, I had a pretty significant loss in the business. I mean, it's just spent more money than I brought in. But I also equipped my shop with a brand new anvil. Brand new, fresh from the factory. I upgraded torch setup so I could do some cool bending and twisting work that I couldn't before. I got myself an old forge body, which I got a really good deal on that, but I got an old forge body, which is where the coal sits. I actually blacksmith on coal. So that's over 100 years old cast forge body that I'm still using, and able to repurpose some of that stuff. But last year was my, I had an opportunity for 1 year in business to work with a performing living history group at Renaissance fairs. And as a blacksmith, and gave me a great leg up. We separated for a number of different reasons that we don't need to get into here, but separated there. And then last year was my first year kind of on my own. This year, I'm not doing any spring events, might start doing stuff in late summer, early fall. Just had to kind of get some more focus back on the family, because that was taking half of the year. It was every weekend I was just not home, and I was working the rest of the time. So still not a full-time thing, but my first official year on the books to the second year was like a 243% growth, and this year I'm already at like an 800 and something % growth over last year, and that's still nothing. We're talking a few tens of thousands of dollars by the end of the year if I'm lucky.
You know what? That doesn't matter, because you're getting there and you're making the right steps to do the right things, and that's really what matters. A lot of people in small business, they go into it in whatever field, and they think that, I have this fantastic idea, it's going to be amazing, it's going to change everything, and it'll happen within the first 6 months. And it can't. It's just, the industry is not designed like that. It's, unless you have a ton of money backing you, that's different. But yeah, no.
Even then, I know a lot of those startups that have just absolutely cratered.
Oh yeah, completely. But you are going about it the right way. You are upgrading. You're taking your time, taking the hits when you need to, and then pushing yourself further along. So you are doing it the right way. You're establishing yourself, establishing the base, and growing as you do it. And I think that's freaking awesome. So kudos, Matt, and I appreciate that. That's awesome. So commissions, tell me about commissions. What type of things are you taking in? What do you want people to come to you for?
I am still not sure. I think it'd be great if I could, find a group that wanted like a regular thing that paid me every month, kind of a patron of the arts thing that would actually let me take this full time, Not gonna happen. Realistically, that just isn't it. But I've done a little bit of blade work. I've done a couple of axes, some war hammers, actually some of the armoring I've done, but I'm really not sure. I kind of like doing something new. I kind of like the commission process because it gives me something new, that ADHD, novelty. And it feeds that I've got a few commissions on the table right now. The other thing is I'm still looking at tooling. I'm still saving up to buy tooling that will allow me to actually go full-time at this, because there are commissions that I just can't produce without the help of other blacksmiths, because I don't have the right tools in my shop. So I have to go over to their shop and borrow time, and we trade materials back and forth, and I have a smelter and they don't, and so I've been able to smelt some pieces of copper that they've been using as like decorative elements on knives, and back and forth like that. And they've been giving me old parts out of, semis that are useful as knife steel or, things like that. So commissions, I mean, I've done a number of knives have been the number one commission I have. And I know that's like a huge thing for people to buy, but right now the custom knives wouldn't really pay the bills. I need a steady thing of stock items that I can produce with high enough margins to offset the commission business, because unfortunately I don't think the market is out there for, at my skill level, selling $1,000, $1,500 knife.
Yeah, well, no, and I mean, it's one of those things, as you go and grow, you learn more. But knowing that you're actually, first off, in conversations with the other blacksmiths in the area and all that, and working with them, that's actually really cool. I like that concept. Instead of being at competition, that's actually very unique and rare in most industries. So I like that.
And I'm not sure that it's entirely regional, but I know the Midwest United States is actually there's a pretty good network of blacksmiths. They all at least kind of know who the other guys are if they're doing anything of, significance, more than hobbyists. You start to learn who those people are. And there are some of them who are, shirt off their back, willing to help you. You'll find, guys pulling old stuff out of their garage, and you buy $1,000 worth of equipment for $10. I did that last year. It was an estate sale. I'm not going to turn that down. But then there's also, I've had the opportunity to take a free class with a guy who helped define the mastersmith test for the American Bladesmith Society. Awesome. And he's written some papers on like the migration of carbon within steel and all the fancy science behind knife steels and stuff. And not nearly as much as I'd like. I don't have the money to go and take like one of his week-long classes, but it's been a privilege. And this community, at least around here, has been pretty good about that. Now, I know not everybody in the blacksmithing community has the most integrity, at least around here. That's been another balancing act, is trying to distinguish myself with a little bit of integrity. I've got actually a couple of groups who will only come to me as their blacksmith, a couple of living history groups, because I have done my damnedest to stick to my word, charge them exactly what I said, and deliver the thing on time. Yeah. And communicated throughout. So I think I'm trying to differentiate myself in that way, just for my own personal values. But then it has been really helpful, because even though not everybody in the community I work with is always the best person, I've been able to draw some boundaries that I haven't been able to in the past, to protect myself, to protect my family, and I'm working on that. There's still more that needs to be done, but it's been an interesting industry in that regard.
That's pretty cool. Especially the integrity thing. I'm a big advocate of that myself when it comes to businesses. I was thinking over the Patreon idea that you had just kind of thrown out there. Would there be a way to do like something specifically for the tabletop people, where you can do like little trinkets quickly, but with still quality in them at a cheap enough cost that you'd be able to do like a $25 Patreon a month and ship it out to them while still working on bigger pieces for you and to sell, right?
Right now I don't have enough of those things. I know one of the members of the Creative Coffee Discord, because we got to shout that out at least once.
It gets shouted out a lot before and after. Don't you worry about that, man.
But one of the members had a huge campaign. They had kind of wrapped up, or had kind of come to an end, as some campaigns do. And I did these little 1.5-inch daggers out of they're forged out of nails. They don't require fuel, and because they're a friend, I took a piece of copper wire and wrapped it around the handle, which is something I'd never done before, and made a copper wrapped handle, and they look amazing. And they were a ton of fun and super easy to produce, but the thing is, my inventory on things like that, or the number of products that I have right now that fit that niche, probably doesn't have the volume I'd need to do a subscription service. It'd be 3 months and you've seen all of it. And I mean, it's worth looking at and developing, some other stuff, but
because I'm thinking, a lot of the times in D&D and all of that, you have lots of potential things you can use trinkets for. Not just, little knickknacks and all that, but actually affliction status coins, where you can actually etch in, poisoned or whatever that can be used. Various things like that. You put an idea in front of me and I'm going to come up with something for you, man. Anyways, we could talk about that shit later. Because I love that type of shit. It's so good.
Right? And I've got access to friends in the 3D printing industry and sand casting equipment. So, doing tokens and stuff like that would be doable. But again, it almost touches into a whole nother industry. I'm smelting more as a small-time supplement to my blacksmithing needs, more than I am, wanting to start my own foundry at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, big-term, long-term dream is to have not just Warmoose Forge, but Warmoose Industries, and really serve a lot of the historical reenactment community, especially Renaissance era, with a group of people who can actually produce everything from period historical, swords and armor, all the way up through some of the more fantasy stuff, that's done out of a pre cut blank of steel that you just grind the edges into. As opposed to a hand-forged, handcrafted, 100% hand tool done, not a single power tool touches it till it's done, type scenario. And I'm not there yet, but that would be the dream, have an industry of like-minded creators that is working together.
An amazing goal, and achievable, because the LARPing community, the Renaissance community, they are growing every year. So it's definitely feasible, and I love that. I think that's a perfect end goal to want to do. That's amazing.
I'm really excited. and I need to reach out to the guy and see how far he's gotten, but I did a blade for a HEMA group, which is the Historic European Martial Arts. So it's basically, they study the old sword fighting rule books and manuals from Germany, Italy, England, France, all of that stuff, and try and recreate it as best they can with modern understandings of martial arts and all that. And I built him a custom German farmer's knife for fighting in HEMA, and I need to see how that turned out for him.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, totally. That's, I don't know. I love blacksmithing just in general. My mind is, I was a big wood guy. I told you this before. I made a lot of wood things for tabletop games. So never got into the metal, and it's the stuff I could do with metal and wood and leather is, I just want to do it all, man. Just want to get my hands dirty and just make it all with people. He's so good. But anyways.
And that's fun with blacksmithing, because I have to know the woodwork. I mean, everything from scabbards to handles to, to building my own anvil stand. Built that myself, all the way through the leatherworking for the sheaths and scabbards and pouches and belts and aprons and...
Flowing right into the segue for the leather. I was getting there because I saw the scabbard that you made there. You did make that one, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I was paying attention. Well, I pay attention to shit. Anyways, yeah, no, I saw that and I loved it. I thought it fit really good. It looked fantastic. How has the working with the wood and the metal, or the wood and the leather and all of that really helped or grown, I guess.
Again, my focus is on the blacksmithing, but I think the novelty is really nice, being able to, kind of switch gears after you spend a ton of time. And a lot of people don't realize this, but to produce a custom knife, you spend a significant amount of time with your hands and 600 plus grit sandpaper, which is super fine sandpaper, to shave down hardened steel into a mirror surface.
Yeah.
But then you get to switch and you get to work with leather, which can be molded with a little bit of moisture in your fingers to make, like, that, if you look, that finger swell, or the finger well, that where the sheath drops into the finger well is wet molded into the leather. I've also been able to pick up some cool stamps and some things like that, and use that leatherworking knowledge to not just supplement that, but then also to be able to start to do things like a little bit of light, rough jewelry work. I'm not talking silver and gold and bright smithing stuff, but it's been fun to explore the different areas. And sometimes when I get a little stuck in one area, kind of hit that artistic rut, having another outlet can be really, really handy to, shift focus for just a minute and come back to it fresh.
Definitely. No, that's again, part of the ADHD is whole switching up to something different and being able to jump between tasks. I mean, that's
keep
why
moving forward.
Exactly. That's why I have so many different things, is because I can spend an hour on one thing and then jump to another one and then jump to another one and still feel accomplished. It's quite nice. I'm stressed, but it helps. Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna wrap it up. We're well past the half an hour now, so this has been so much fun. We're gonna start with where can people find you?
Pretty much everywhere online, at Warmoose Forge. www.warmooseforge.com has some options to purchase some of the items from me. Etsy has that, and then that website has links to all of my socials right now. I think even might have access to like threads and stuff like that I'm a little more active on as a personal thing, but then has access to all the other stuff, including getting in contact with me for things like custom pieces or classes, though that's on the back burner right now as I work on some facility upgrades to make classes a little more feasible. Speaking of the squirrel, I just found a demo piece I'd done for somebody.
Actually, put that a little closer. That looked really cool. Oh, that is so cool. I love that.
It's a candle scribe for a pagan and occult supplier, friend of mine. They have an online shop, and they asked for some candle scribes. So this was the first of one of their drawn designs.
So cool. I love that one. Jesus, you need lots of those ones. Bet you those would sell pretty good.
Yeah, they're the next stock item, and some of the most recent shop upgrades I've been able to do have actually enabled me to do these in a way that's time and money efficient.
That's the thing, man. It's making it all work together. All right, so then finally we'll tack in here, just because you are such an advocate for the neurodiversity and all of that. When it comes to overcoming a lot of these things to do these creative projects and your own business and all of that, what's something you could give as advice to someone?
Self-diagnosis is valid. Because you're not taking resources from anyone, and it can help you understand yourself. And even if you aren't on the spectrum, or you are but not enough to get a diagnosis, sometimes the coping strategies might work for you. There are a lot of neurotypical people who say, everybody has that. Well, yes, and it depends on the degree. That's what makes it a diagnosis versus not. But if those coping strategies work for you, if that community, which tends to be pretty open online, you'll always run into weird people, but that community can be really helpful with resources and helping you to understand yourself. So if you're curious about yourself, you think something might be going on, it's worth looking into.
Perfect, absolutely perfect. And then on my behalf, I just want to say you have been such an amazing member of the cafe. It's been a blast having you here, You bring a lot of humor and joy and good conversations to people. A lot of people respect what you tell them and love interacting with you. You are just
well, that's good, because I always feel like I might be self-promoting a little too much and getting annoying.
You know, that's why those channels are there. It's one of those things. Everybody feels like they're annoying in some way when it comes to the community, I've been noticing. But no, you
none of that has to do with life trauma.
Well, basically, right? Yeah. But we won't get into that one today. But no, you are just a welcome member, and I love having you here. And it's been amazing to chat with you here. We're pushing 41 minutes, 42 minutes now. It's been an absolute blast. I've loved it. So thank you very much. I'll make sure to put all your info down below, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Have a good one. Bye. Thank you so much to Warmoose Forge for sharing his incredible journey with us today. It has been truly inspiring to hear about your passions and your business and absolutely everything that you do. You are an inspiration, sir. Everyone else, remember to like and subscribe, leave a rating for the Drippin' Creativity podcast wherever you happen to be listening, and don't miss out on the Wednesday show. I've been your host, Chris Corvan. You can find me everywhere at Chris of the Void. This has been the Drippin' Creativity podcast, part of the Creative Coffee Cafe community. Stay creative, stay inspired, and until next time, see ya.